Mira is a talent acquisition specialist by profession, has a bachelor's degree in journalism, and has been a practitioner of Raj Yoga meditation and a teacher of Raj Yoga meditation for over 40 years. Thank you, Mira. Once again, a beautiful opening. So welcome to everyone for this evening's event, Spiritual Ethics in Daily Life. Welcome to everyone in person, but also if you're online on the webcast, the website, or one of our social media platforms. So we're really fortunate today we're going to be able to hear the wisdom of Sister Jayanti as she explores how spiritual principles can guide our decisions, nurture our relationships, and bring greater harmony to our everyday life. And a couple of house rules before we move forward. So we're not expecting a fire drill this evening. So if we do hear the fire alarm, so we exit the same way that we came. The ushers here will guide you, but we go down the steps and we congregate on the other side of the road on the big square. The bathroom is just on the left down this corridor, and there's also a water fountain just at the top of the stairs that you came up. Okay, so we hope that this evening is going to be insightful, practical, and inspiring. But before we move further forward, I'd like to share a little bit about the Brahma Kumaris. So they were founded in 1937. It's a worldwide spiritual organization in over 100 countries and dedicated to personal transformation through the teaching of Raj Yoga meditation, a range of courses aimed at developing a positive approach to life, living a stress-free life, and living harmoniously. Uniquely, the Brahma Kumaris is the only female-led spiritual organization in the world, and with its leadership, very much embodying compassion, humility, and wisdom. And today, we're actually going to be spanning the generations. So I'd like to introduce Krishna next. So Krishna will be coming up in a moment to share her own experience of Brahma Baba. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about Brahma Baba after we've heard from Krishna, but we'll hear about her experience first of all. Now, Krishna is 13. She's a student here at Inner Space Wembley. And I said we're spanning the generations. Krishna is what we now call Generation Alpha. So that's people born after 2010. And the two characteristics that I discovered about Generation Alpha is that they're highly connected, and I think we'll see that when we hear her little presentation, and environmentally conscious. So, Krishna, welcome, and if you'd like to come and share your experience.
Om Shanti and good evening, everyone. My name is Krishna and I'm 13 years old. Today I'm honored to speak in the presence of Sister Jayanti and share my most divine experience with Shiv Baba. One day I visited Inner Space to meet the sisters and visit Baba's room. As I sat there in silence, something magical happened. Baba's eyes shone brightly at me. It was as if he was speaking directly to me. He told me that I must follow my own path of love. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace and love. Shiv Baba's presence filled my heart with warmth and clarity, inspiring me to live a life of compassion and positivity. I feel so grateful for Brahma Baba. His teachings have shown me how to find strength, wisdom, and joy in every aspect. He's like a guiding light, helping me navigate challenges and grow spiritually. My mother is my inspiration in my spiritual journey. She has nurtured me with kindness and love. I'm also deeply grateful to the selfless sisters who have supported my journey with their care and love. Shiv Baba's guidance has brought a divine change in me, helping me discover my journey of spirituality. Thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Krishna. That was really beautiful and wonderfully delivered as well. So, a really powerful experience Krishna was sharing with us. Um, so, we're here today really celebrating the life and legacy of Brahma Baba, who's the founder of the Brahma Kumaris. And actually, I did some research, and he was in a generation which kind of is on the cusp of two, the lost generation and the missionary generation, which I hadn't heard about before, those born around the 1880s. And actually it says the characteristics of those in that generation is they're social reformers, they have a religious influence, and they lead during difficult times. So I think all very relevant. So he founded the Brahma Kumaris in 1937 and began a unique spiritual journey which emphasized the power of self-transformation through meditation, pure living, and universal love. And his example continues to inspire many, many people worldwide, reminding us of the importance of leading a life guided by spiritual ethics, our topic today. And he was a pioneer and embodied many of the qualities of a pioneer. He's visionary, courageous, resilient, persistent, creative. And his example continues to guide us and provides the footsteps for us to follow. And for my own personal experience, the feeling I get when I sit in front of Brahma Baba is that he sees the very best in me, but not just me, everyone who sits in front of him. And that's really, really empowering and kind of gives me a real sense of belief. So I've got a short poem, and this is what they call an acrostic poem. So an acrostic poem is where you write the letters, Brahma Baba, down the side, and then each line begins with one of those letters. Brahma Baba. Born in Sindh, to a humble beginning, rising early to quench a deep spiritual yearning, a diamond trader, truth from falsehood he could discern. Hearts he touched as souls flew and began to learn, millions inspired to follow his way, aspiring souls searching for a brighter day. Beyond the senses he did strive, a pure vision of all, keeping hope alive. Building a life that was a masterpiece, and there he stands, a tower of peace. So today, Sister Jayanti and Hitesh will be taking us through the life of Brahma Baba and how that embodied spiritual ethics in daily life. So Hitesh, who's going to be interviewing Sister Jayanti this evening, is on the cusp of the millennial Gen Z generations. But I think we talked earlier, he said I just tip into millennials. He has a master's in data science and analytics and works for the Department of Work and Pensions as a security infrastructure engineer, and is on a spiritual path to try and find the answer to the question why, and how to find peace in chaotic times, but also how to be his true, authentic self. So the millennials are tech-savvy, or digital natives, socially conscious, and they value diversity. And Sister Jayanti, born after the Second World War and before the 1960s, is a baby boomer, and that's committed, disciplined, independent. But there's many more qualities that Sister Jayanti, that shine from Sister Jayanti, and it's an honour to introduce her this evening. She's the highly respected additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris and senior teacher, and she's a much sought after international public speaker, and she shares a vision of a future world where living is anchored in universal spiritual principles and ethics. She's the UN rep in Geneva for the Brahma Kumaris, and her tireless daily example of living a life in which spiritual ethics guide her every thought, word, and action is an inspiration to many. My own personal experience of Sister Jayanti is that the qualities that really shine through are compassion, love and warmth, clarity and simplicity, and encouragement and positivity. And the clarity and simplicity you'll experience tonight, and reminds me of the story of the woodcutter who got really confused because each day he went back to cut wood, he found it more and more difficult. It took him longer and longer, until a wise man spoke to him and said, each morning spend 5 minutes sharpening your axe. And Sister Jayanti has been doing that for over 50 years, sharpening the axe of her intellect, which brings great clarity and simplicity. So I'd like to invite Sister Jayanti and Hitesh up onto the stage. And also, could we have a show of hands for those that are here in person for the first time? Has anyone come to Inner Space Wembley for the very first time? Okay. Thank you. So about 6 or 7. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. It's truly an honor to be here with Sister Jayanti as we delve into a fascinating and deeply meaningful topic, spiritual ethics in everyday life. Everyday life, as we know, moves at an incredible pace. Generations are evolving rapidly, and advancements in tech, particularly with AI. AI, as we see, is reshaping the way we live and the way our lives will go ahead in the future. This is where the question arises: how do we maintain our spiritual ethics? How do we maintain that grounding? So this evening, let us dive into this further. So, let's start off with, what is the meaning of ethics? Has it changed as time has gone on? Has it changed with relationships, maybe? So, Sister Jayanti, what would you think ethics really means?
Om Shanti. It is a gathering of the different generations, Jim. 13 and a young person and myself with plenty of grey hair. So I'm very happy to be here. Ethics for me are the code of conduct with which we live by. And ethics in reality are basic foundations, and so they don't change. But our attitude towards them changes. And so a simple example where, for example, my father, if he would come home and say, I've done a deal today, he was in business and textiles, and it didn't mean pages and pages of a contract with terms and conditions that you have to read with a magnifying glass. It would mean that two people had come together and made a decision and shaken hands, and if they needed to sign something, they would, but it would be a simple thing. And today, that's not the case anymore. And so that ethic of authenticity and honesty, which is the foundation of human life and relationships, that seems to have got diluted over the years. And so today, it doesn't really matter, it's okay, and who's going to notice, who's going to bother, that sort of attitude. And so yes, I do feel that the times that have changed have created a crisis.
So would you say that there is is there a difference to spiritual ethics then? Or would you say it's similar or different? So a little bit on that. You've met the pioneer of peace, Brahma Baba. He was the very embodiment of spirituality. So what would you say then is spiritual ethics then?
Brahma Baba's life was based on truth and honesty, even prior to starting his his life was a journey anyway, in terms of his commitment to religion and devotion to the family and so on. But a change happened when he was nearing 60. And from that time on, he became the instrument, as we would say, for the teachings of the divine. So even before that, his honesty and love for truth and his respect for all people was always there. And then after that, becoming an instrument for the divine, his life was dedicated totally to service. And so the path that he has shown us is one that is really for today's world. If we want to have peace in our hearts, if we want to have good relationships with others, those ethics are the same because they're the foundation of life. And I think the power of his teachings is that they're very simple, very clear, and we can follow them in our life today if we choose. For example, Baba would say, stay in the family, stay at home, fulfill your responsibilities, but the early morning hours can be for yourself. You know, people talk about me time today, but the real time for me is that period in the early morning hours for silence, for introspection, for study of spiritual knowledge, to be able to move forward and to have that clarity. The woodcutter story is good. So 5 minutes for the self or 50 minutes for the self, whatever you can make. But to have that time for the self, to be able to move forward in that way. And so the things that he has demonstrated with his life and trained us for are the things that can help us here and now in the crazy world in which we live.
So from what I've learned about him, you know, he, like you mentioned, he didn't just, you know, practice spiritual ethics, he lived it. Now, this is something that's kind of hard to achieve. It's achievable, but obviously not to a certain level. What's your take on how Brahma Baba took on this spiritual ethics on like a day-to-day basis? Like, how could we implement what he learned and what the journey he went on so we can try that for ourselves?
One of the things that people recognize as being a universal ethic, you know, they call it a golden rule sometimes. Do unto others what you would wish them to do to you, and don't do to others what you wouldn't wish for yourself. And so Brahma Baba was always one who was giving and always a person with high ideals. And I'll share a little story with you, which is before he became the instrument. I knew his daughter, and his daughter was also one of the spiritual leaders of our organization. And she said how at one point a young man working in his jewelry business was there, and he'd been left in charge of various things, and Baba had trust in him, and then found that there was a gem missing, and it was a very specific one, and so it was noticeable. And so Baba sat with him very quietly, very peacefully, and said, son, is there a problem you're facing? And after a few minutes of small talk, then the young man actually told him that yes, his mother was very ill and she was in hospital. And then Baba said to him, do you have the money to deal with it? And he burst into tears. And so the conversation proceeded, and it became clear that yes, he had taken that gem with the intention that it would bring him the money to help the mother. And Baba said, but you just had to come and tell me. You didn't have to take it. I would have given you the money. And so Baba then gave him the money for that. And so the way in which he dealt with situations was based on a spiritual truth. And so that was the tenet of his life, the basis on which he lived. And then afterwards, even though when he started this organization, can you imagine, this was in the 30s, and even today in that part of the subcontinent, this was in the area of Sindh. And so even today, that area, I don't know about the rest of Pakistan, but certainly I've been in that area many, many times. And women are still second-class citizens. And so in the 30s, definitely that was the case. But Baba recognized the value of equality. And so Baba decided that that part of society that hadn't had an opportunity should be given positive affirmation. And so he was probably the first one who started affirmative action. And so he made sure that women were given the role of teachers and leaders within the organization. So because he deeply believed in equality, he did this, and it created quite a revolution. There was quite a strong reaction from the community, as you can imagine, to the point where he actually left Hyderabad, which was his hometown, to move to Karachi. But what he didn't realize was the community would follow him there. And so then the community settled in Karachi. So when he believed in something, it didn't matter whether there was opposition or not, but he knew that it was something he had to do. So if today I'm in a situation where I feel that there is injustice or inequality, then what is a positive way I can deal with it so that I can make a difference and bring about a change? Not to fight the people who are opposing you, or not to be angry about it or upset about it, but quietly, with spiritual power, do what you know is right.
So an interesting thing about the story that you mentioned there, that the gentleman stolen the gem to obviously get treatment for his family member. Now, some could say that's unethical, or some could say it's ethical. Now, obviously, Baba forgave the gentleman who did this. So how would you say now in this current time, like making a decision like that, obviously, if I was to steal something to better someone, is that, it's not okay, but how could we find that balance of like all the ethics? Because if I look at it from my point of view, I'm taking care of my family, or someone needs help and I'm in a dire situation. But then if you look at the other hand, you've stolen something. So how could, obviously Baba was this embodiment of peace, so he forgave it. So how could one go about that kind of situation?
I'm sure that today also, if I believe in the path of honesty, I can find some way to be able to deal with it. In England, we're lucky. We have somebody who's an health expert in the way things work here. So in the UK generally, it's not necessary that I should steal to be able to fulfill my responsibility to my family. And even say, for example, in India, where you don't have health care in the same way, yet there are foundations who will be able to support you and help you. There are many, many hospitals that are run on the basis of charity, and so there's a huge network of those hospitals, and you just have to do. And today, of course, research is very easy. You can find all the information you want with a few taps of button. So there are ways and means to fulfill your responsibilities without resorting to stealing and lying.
Yeah, so a little bit about Baba, like he had the Supreme guide him, but before that he was on his own journey. Before he got to the Supreme level, he had 13 gurus. Now, how does one know what is my journey? How do we know the spiritual path that we're on is the right one? Because again, trying to look at it as an everyday life, how we're living life, balancing work, family, social life. How do we find that this is the path and this is correct? How do we balance
for Brahma Baba, normally you would say that a human being has one guru in their life, not a whole string of gurus. But for Baba, it was interesting because the first guru went to answered certain questions, but there were still deeper things he needed to understand. And each guru would say to him, move on, move on. You have my blessings, you can move on. Normally people would say if you leave one guru and go to another, you'd be cursed, that they would use strong language and they wouldn't want you to do that. But in his case, because of his humility and pure love for God and deep desire to understand truth, every guru allowed him to pass on to another, until he came to the point where, nearly 60, he had a series of visions. And as a result of those visions, when he went to his guru, the guru had no answers for him. And so again, the man said, you're free, go and search. And what he did this time was not to go and look for another guru. He went off into the mountains, he settled his work and went off into silence, telling his family that he needed time for himself. And through that time of silence, he was able to understand more deeply what he needed to do. Today, we don't have to go off to the Himalayas, but what we can do is see, is there a path that's able to give me answers to the questions that I have? And I speak from my own experience. So the questions that I had were being answered through the introductory course in meditation, Raj Yoga. Every time I had a question, not only would that question be answered, but many other things connected with that question. And so every day was an adventure for me at that time. Every day new things were coming. And so it was a very intoxicating journey, very, very powerful. But not only that introductory part, later on also, even today, having studied these things for many, many years, there are still questions, and what I find is that I pick up we study every day, and so we call it the Murli, God's magic flute, the music. And so picking up the Murli and reading what it says will give me guidance in a particular situation that I may be in. And so every day the Murli is my guide, and so it helps me hugely. So one is when you find a path that answers your questions, but secondly, it's not just theoretical answers, but you also get very practical steps in how to be able to experience those things. And so if your own experience through meditation and a deeper understanding helps you have more clarity and you move on, then there's an expression we use, the authority of experience. And so if I've experienced something, then I'm going to believe it. I'm going to stay with it. And so why I've stayed with it for this period of time is because not only are my questions still being answered, but also because if I follow step by step the methodology, I'm being guided in a way that can lead me to an experience, so that I can not just say I know just on the basis of theory, but I know through my own experience.
So there's another interesting topic you mentioned there about, when you find that path and that path seems to answer your questions. Now, if we apply that to everyday life, so, we're on this spiritual journey and we feel like the journey that we're on is answering our questions and we believe this and we stand by it. Now, we know it's right, our heart is saying it's right as well, but there always could be, external forces or external people who could be questioning you, like, hey, no, that's wrong. Now, whether that could be other gurus, astrologers, parents, etc. How do you essentially put them aside and you focus on what you think? Parents will have the love for their kids, they would want the best. So it's not essential to say fight that, but how do you show your parents that this is the journey for me and this is what I think is best for me?
My father challenged me very strongly when I decided that this was to be my life, and I admit that it was quite a drastic change. Normally you go to a center and you come home and do what you need to do, but I had decided that I wanted to live in the ashram, so as I say, it was pretty drastic and it was difficult for him to accept that. But when he saw two things, A, he saw my happiness, and B, he saw that the work I was doing was actually helping people. Think about the time in the 70s when meditation was very much a fringe thing. It wasn't establishment at all. And so at that time, when he met some of the people who had had their lives transformed through meditation, young people who were experimenting with drugs and so on and so forth, and they shared their experience of how meditation had changed them, had given them the capacity to be able to say no to things that were addictive. And they were able to bring about that transformation. When he saw there was a practical application of the work I was doing and it was of benefit, then he felt it's okay. But till then, I had to be very polite and very sweet. I made sure that I was always very respectful, but I would stick to what I was doing. And it was nothing wrong that he could say that what you're doing is damaging for anyone. And then later, he began to see the results.
So you would say that just stick to what you believe in and keep the calm approach and just keep moving forward, right, in what you believe in.
If it's not harming anyone.
Yeah.
You see, there are sometimes things we'd say that, well, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it, whether it's good or bad, but that's a different attitude. But when I know that something is not harmful, neither for me nor for anyone else, so then yes, if I believe something, let me continue.
So, adding on to that as well, so, how do we find the right balance to make the right decision? Because, again, like I said, external forces, or you may not be, believing in it 100%, like, it could be an emotional factor, or you just could be overthinking a lot that, I don't know if this path is for me, like, you're questioning a lot. And how do you, stick with that decision of, no, that's it, this is what I believe in? So, Sister Jayanti, you went through this experience with the Brahma Kumaris and you felt like, no, this is, how did you know that this is it? I know it answered your questions, but could you elaborate a little bit more? Like, what were you questioning at the time that it felt like, yes, this has answered it for me?
The question that really started my journey with the Brahma Kumaris was Dadi Janki saying, our conscience today is influenced by so many external factors that we don't know what is right and what is wrong anymore. And this is 1968, April, and permissive society had started. The hippie generation was still around. The flower power people were singing their songs. So it was a time of the students' revolution in Paris. So it was a time of upheaval. But people were finding different ways to navigate their way through all of that. And for me, at that time, having started university, the choices were traditional Western style life, permissive style life, traditional Hindu lifestyle, my father, or a spiritual lifestyle. And I had no idea which was right and which is what I would be comfortable with. And I didn't want to take steps in the wrong direction that would be irrevocable, because sometimes you begin in a journey and it's like on the motorway, you have to drive 20 miles before you can turn around and you discover you're on the wrong track. So I didn't want to waste years and years of my life and then say, I wish something else. So I was just biding my time. I thought, let me study, let me have a career, and when I need to decide, I'll think about it. But then I came to India, and after a few months, came to Dadi Janki. And when she told me this, that this is the issue that's happening, that it's the conscience that isn't able to work properly, and to make it functional again, you have to get it clean. And I said, well, how do you do that? And she said, meditate. And so that's where my first question was answered. What is it that doesn't allow us to see clearly where it is we need to go? And so how do I remove all those external influences of, and it's even worse today, because at that time media was BBC, ITV, full stop, and a few newspapers. But today the influence of media, social media, as you would know, is so huge, so huge. And there's a lot of confusion about right and wrong, what should I do, what should I not do. And so even where maybe I begin thinking that this is what is right, but there'll be 1,000 influencers who will tell you, no, that's not right, this is right. So just media on its own, never mind culture, education, friends, and anything else. But it's a world in which we have a huge amount of choice and we don't know what's right or wrong. And there's a statement that says that when you have a lot of choice but not enough wisdom, that's the recipe for stress, which is as you see today. Why is it that young people get stressed, young people get depressed? The statistics are absolutely awful. And so I think that if people were to understand that there is a way in which if you just never mind Raj Yoga, but if you just keep your mind silent, and if you begin to explore your own identity, your inner identity, and through that you're moving in a direction in which you're beginning to see your way towards the light. And for me, I remember age 14, and I had a question. Well, is there a God or isn't there a God? Age 10, maybe 8, I think 8. I'd asked the question, is Santa Claus real? And I first saw Santa Claus in Selfridges, I think, at that time. We just arrived in England, it was around that time. So I didn't know, and I didn't know who to ask. But age 14, I didn't know if there was a God or there wasn't. And traditional Hinduism wasn't teaching me. Traditional Christianity I was exposed to a lot, having gone to Catholic school from age 4 through to age 11, and then Christian school. There weren't any other schools. And so who's going to tell me? The people I was asking weren't telling me. So when I came to Raj Yoga then, understanding the soul and immediately having an experience that within this physical form there's this being of light, the inner being, I was able to experience that within the first lesson. Second lesson was about the subject of the divine and God not a physical form or even an angelic form, but just a being of light. And again, that made sense. And so there are things that are very deep that you have questions about. And if you find that you're getting answers to those questions, and not only answers in theory, but in experience, then you say, well, let me carry on.
So, one thing you mentioned there about finding the right wisdom. Now, there's a story that I remember of Baba with one of the gurus where the guru approached Brahma Baba asking for some money, and Brahma Baba just gave it with the self, like, here, take. And then Brahma Baba then later on found out that what it was used for was not for the right reasons. Now, during that time, a lot of, if that was to happen now, a lot of people, you're getting a lot of backlash. A lot of people would be saying, oh, how can you do this? Do you not think? What's going on? How do you find that how do you balance that? How do you find the equilibrium of, you know what, I'm doing this for myself? Like Brahma Baba wanted to just, just helplessly helped out the guru at the time. And how can we do that in our day-to-day? Because, whether it's work, whether it's family, there's always things that happen. But how can we maintain that kind of equilibrium? Just, I want to do right.
Today I think it's much easier to get information than it was in those days. That would have been probably around 1930. And also the whole feeling, the bhavana, the devotion, and that aspect of just surrender in that way was very much Brahma Baba's. He wasn't Brahma Baba at that time, he was Dada Lekraj at that time. Later, his name got changed. So at that point, Dada Lekraj would have felt that it was his spiritual duty to be able to help the Guru if the Guru is asking for something. Today, I would ask, well, who is this Guru? And what is he really wanting? And, well, why is he asking me particularly? So there'd be a lot of questions that I would have before I would part with anything. And maybe my bhavna isn't as strong as Brahma Baba's was at that time. But I think at this moment, it's good to ask questions and to find out what's behind the ask. Why is this coming to me? And so I think it's part of the equilibrium and the balances. Get the information you need and then make a decision.
So you're saying it's get the information, make a thorough decision, and then make a thorough decision to yourself, and then obviously produce the outcome, right? Rather than just blindly just thinking about something, right?
I have to say something that once Brahma Baba started following the path of Raj Yoga, he began to see the aspects where there had been blind faith. And so there can be faith which is, within the Gita, the term faith is used in the context of intellect, the buddhi. And buddhi means you think about it, you explore it, you investigate it, rather than just believe it. Buddhi is very much that aspect of the interrogation and then the understanding. And so the Gita speaks about faith in the intellect rather than just faith in the mind. The mind can swing from here to there within moments, but the intellect weighs up things, tries to reason, tries to understand. And so there's a difference between blind faith and faith that's based on the intellect.
So you would say that it's important to, essentially, when I say believe in yourself, not obviously think about it and overthink about it, but, just have that faith within yourself to go ahead and make that decision. Would you say that's right to have that kind of approach?
I think if I'm on a spiritual path and I'm also studying, not just thinking about me in silence on my own, and even better if it's part of a community, what I need to do is to then trust others who are studying and have been on the path further than me, and the proof that I can see in their lives. And so, yes, I have to come to the point where I can be free from supports and be independent, but I think in the first part of my journey, if I'm in a community, and I don't mean living in a community, I mean studying together in a community, meditating with a community, if I'm within that community, then there'll be others who can help me understand where it is that I'm a little bit off track and how to come back on track. And I'll also be able to see signs of transformation in my life which give me the confidence that yes, I'm on track and things are okay. And if I see that if in my life there are things that are happening that shouldn't be happening, where I've done something and then I say, I wish I hadn't. So if that's still going on, then I can't just say that I trust myself and carry on.
Yeah.
So there are parameters.
Okay. So now, again, we're on this spiritual path. Again, there's a lot going on right now in the world. Whether it's political change, climate change, just there's literally a lot going on with wars, etc. It's almost like there is a paradigm shift approaching, one can get that feeling. How can we focus more on our spiritual side and, essentially not think about the external world, things going on with the world? Yeah, we're not saying ignore it, we acknowledge it, it's a lot what's going on, but how can we focus on our spiritual journey? And could you also let us know as well some of the practices that you practice as well, on a day-to-day basis when it comes to that?
What spiritual knowledge did for me was to help me understand that all these things that you're seeing externally, whether it's the huge divisions that exist in society, or whether it's climate change, or whether it's the economy going through ups and downs in a major way, the essential factor why all of these things are so critical now and moving through a lot of upheaval is because we're not in touch with our own inner identity, and we're not in touch, as a result of that, with our own inner core values. And so when I begin to see life from a spiritual perspective, then I'm not just going to go demonstrating in terms of environment and climate. I understand what's happening there, and I see that the violence against nature, against animals, against all forms of life is actually something that's not just out there, it's within here. And so that's one example. But if I take up the subject of climate change, then I know that my contribution isn't going to be by demonstrating on the streets. My contribution is going to be if I bring about personal change, simplify my needs, that's a very practical thing to do, but also if I can bring about the awareness of peace inside, so that I can have peace with my neighbors, but also peace with all forms of life and nature. And if those vibrations of peace can help nature also, that would be of great value and benefit. And I think that the more we talk about these things, but also not just what's happening out there, but the actual root cause of why it's happening, and we begin to understand that and go through the transformation and the paradigm shift, instead of looking out there, the solutions are in here. I've been involved with climate change since 2009, and with the Earth Charter and environment since the 80s. And what I've found is that today people are now talking about change of lifestyle. People are now acknowledging that there's a spiritual dimension. And this is fairly recent, I can date it. It's only from about 2015, just before the Paris Agreement. And of course now we're at a point where the Paris Agreement is about to be torn up. So let's see. But that situation, I remember, one of the largest nature conservation organizations, it was then that they invited us. We've been around for years, but it was then that they invited us to share things from a spiritual perspective, and not just from the Brahma Kumaris, but from many other religious organizations also. And so there's a very distinct difference between before that and after that. So it's a very new thing that's happened, well, relatively. And so I think that people are now ready to understand that the problems are not just the problems out there. The problems are we've moved away from our spiritual identity, we've moved away from our inner values.
So again, I'm going to carry on that question and that topic. So this is just the final question from me before I pass it over to the audience. You've traveled the world, you've seen, you've been on this journey, the spiritual journey yourself, you've traveled the world. What do you mentioned there about, people and what you can see? Do you see something different in people's everyday life? You mentioned that now you feel like people are starting to get that spiritual awakening or starting to take of interest of it. So what have you seen in your time that's changed a lot?
I've seen people interested in meditation. I've seen people interested in veganism, or at least generally plant-based diet. I've seen people look at things from a holistic perspective. There was a time when people were just popping pills, and they don't do that anymore, at least a good number. Now they try to see what are the alternatives, is there something that we can do in terms of our lifestyle that can help? And so these are changes that we've been seeing all along, just within the last 15, 20 years. And so it's, for me, a time in which there is a transition happening. People are now beginning to acknowledge the need for values again, which they weren't some time ago. And so I'm hopeful. And the vision I have is that, yes, as we go through this transition, what will emerge is a better world for all, not just a world of comfort for a few, but truly a better world for all.
So, Sister Jayanti, if you don't mind, so the mic will go around. If the audience would like to ask some questions, is the mic around? Yeah, if there's anyone in the audience. There you go. One second, the mic will come.
When you say a better world for all, the teaching should be from everyone. But as I can see it over my 55 years in England, and I have traveled more or less the world as well, the differences are people are selfish. And what can we do to open this way of life?
I think climate change is playing a big part in all of this, in terms of people beginning to re-evaluate what it is that's important and valuable. There'll be lots of stories about Los Angeles and the fires, negative and positive. But one particular clip, a short video clip that I saw, was about this woman who'd lost her home, and it had been razed to the ground, nothing at all, just smoke. And she said, "It's made me realize the value of the things that are not physical." And she was talking about how she felt great love and compassion in her heart. And it was that situation that had triggered that change. And so, yes, I know there's stories about people looting mansions that were burning down, all of that. And yes, I'm seeing that we're at a very interesting, critical point in which the forces of negativity are very, very strong. The anger, the greed, the ego, all of that. But on the other side, there's now this process of awakening that's happening. And I see that the goodness is what always wins. It's not a fairy story. I think it's a reality that goodness is the original state of the human soul. And so when we've lost track of that identity and we've moved away from that goodness, then we're seeing the results of all of that around us at this moment, at this very time. And so people are beginning to wake up to the goodness that there is within, and we have to now, as I say, the more we talk about it, but more than that, the more we demonstrate it, others are going to be influenced.
Any other questions? Have you got an online question?
So yeah, we have over 300 people online, and we have this question, Sister Jayanti. How can we learn to feel what is in our heart rather than just in our head? And that's from the Uni Media Association.
It's interesting, somebody once said that the journey from here to here is in terms of inches, but actually it's not. It's the longest journey that we ever undertake. And I think time for silence, time for spiritual study, awakens the reality of who we are, and that we are not just head, but we are also heart. And I'm pointing here, but in fact I believe that the heart is here. This is the biological heart, the pumping machine, but the place where we feel love and compassion and purity and joy is actually here within the soul. And so it's not such a big distance then between my understanding, my reasoning, but also my feelings. And so I just need to give myself a little bit of space. When we fill our lives with busyness and everything is externalized, we don't have time to see what feelings we actually do have within. Or sometimes we've gone through experiences that have frozen our feelings. And so to protect ourselves, we don't let ourselves feel. But as I begin a spiritual journey, I come to know that there's that goodness that lies within, and the cold heart begins to melt. And at this moment it's been a little bit the other way around. We have cold hearts and hot heads, and we need to turn it around and have cool heads and warm hearts, and silence helps.
Yeah, there's a question just there.
Shanti. So I just have a question in regards to my, I represent a Swan Care Group, which is a care company. We run workshops for our service users and our care workers, well-being workshops, where we give an insight of spirituality. So I take a lot of insights of Brahma Kumaris, because I've been coming for a very long time. So I've embedded those values, ethos, principles, morals on a day-to-day basis, and all our policies and procedures also actually amplify quite a lot in detail about spirituality and how we can change the well-being and the mindset of our care workers, because they're the ones who are actually dealing and healing people on a day-to-day basis. So I really wanted to have that kind of workshop for them, which we can give them a more of a spiritual insight. So if you can tell me how I can better improve on supporting my service users and my care workers.
I know you come here regularly, right? I think Sister Daksha can put you in touch with a group of people that we have, which is specifically a well-being group, and they explore all the things that need to happen. So really just get in touch through Daksha Ben with the well-being group, and they explore anxiety, they explore other things that are connected. So I think that would help.
Yeah, just a question here.
Om Shanti. Sister, we are living in very intense times where there's beautiful things happening. There's also much anger around. How could we deal with our personal anger and the collective anger?
Personal anger, it doesn't happen overnight, but you begin with changes, and the first step is just to come to that experience of the peaceful soul that I am. If I can experience that even once, and it's not so difficult, just focusing here in the center of the forehead and letting myself come to the awareness of the inner being separate to this physical body. And in that awareness, I come very quickly to the awareness that peace is my original nature. When I've forgotten that and I come into the consciousness of this, then there's you and me and I and mine and all sorts of other things that come up. But in the awareness of the spiritual being that I am, going deeper and deeper within the self, I can experience peace. And one way to develop that experience, and that's going to negate the forces of anger, is to have early morning meditation. And we meditate for a stretch of time early, and this is what I would recommend. But we also meditate together collectively so that the vibrations can multiply and reach out to others too. Another very simple way is having meditated in the morning and even at night, but through the day we lose track. And there's a very simple system we use. It's called traffic control. And it means stopping the traffic here for just a couple of minutes. You can set your mobile phone to give you a signal. You're working at home, it can be on your computer, wherever it is you are. But if every hour, just for 1 or 2 minutes, I just go within and connect with myself and find that sacred space of peace inside, then the next 58 minutes are more likely to be peaceful. It's not just then the effect of 1 minute having an impact for another minute, but 1 minute can have an impact on many other minutes. And so just reminding yourself of who you are and changing my vision and my attitude to others. So I'm seeing others as beings of light, as souls that are shining here, which means that I'm not seeing bigger or smaller, or richer or poorer, or educated, uneducated. I'm seeing the soul. And so my attitude to each one is filled with respect. And of course there's many other things along the journey, but try these 2 things.
Om Shanti to everybody. My question or to say is that earlier on we started off with some of the things talking about AI and the media has taken over our lives. Lot of stuff is coming from there, and doesn't matter how much we try not to pick up that mobile phone to look at it first thing in the morning, even if it means the weather. And then it comes up with a lot of other things. In order to stop in order to stop all that, what can we do in best way to do it? I do meditation early morning and try to do it during the day as well and night. And there are times that I turn around and say to myself that, am I on the right track? I also see things changing around me, like not for a good reason, but for a worse at the moment, around the world, climate change. And that climate change is going to change our lives. We are going back to our originality. And how can I keep myself on the track? Not to get mixed up with all the other stuff. It's a very big one.
Meditation's absolutely vital, but the second thing is also spiritual study. And if I'm making sure that, it's the story of the oil in the lamp, and you have to keep pouring in the oil to keep the flame burning. Otherwise, it was burning brightly a little while ago, and now the flame is getting more and more dim, and it's at the point of, actually just coming out, extinguishing. And so I have to keep pouring in the oil. And that means I have to keep reminding myself through spiritual study, who am I? Who do I belong to? Where am I going? What is it that I really want? And find friends who also believe in these things, so that when I say community, it doesn't have to be an official, formal organization. Just 3 of us, 4 of us sitting together, making time to talk about these things. Just making friends with those who are already on the journey themselves. I'll use an expression that some of you are familiar with, not everyone. When we talk about the cycle of time, we talk about Kali Yuga, the dark age, the iron age, and I believe that that's what's happening at the present moment. But what comes after Kali Yuga is again Satyug, the age of truth, the golden age. Now, if you see time on a linear scale, you start here, you finish here, but the soul is eternal. The world is eternal, so it's not that you start and you finish. And so maybe I also want to offer a note of hope for the future, because there are so many concerns and anxieties about what's going to happen next, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen in the year after. But it's okay. The soul is eternal. The world is eternal. and things will change and they'll move for the better. The immediate pictures of darkness, but after the dark night, the day comes. And so the world of the future is definitely a world of truth and a world of love and harmony. And so today what's going on is the preparation. So the more I prepare myself and the more others prepare with me, that change will happen. So let the world do as it is, but let me do what I need to do, but also find others who think the same way.
So we have one final question, another one from online. So how do we cultivate the strength and determination to be ethical and not give in due to the habits or influence of surroundings, and stay strong in the age of distractions?
I've been talking about the soul, but also in my own meditation, it's not just thinking about the inner being, it's also very much thinking about the divine and connecting with the source. And so when I'm in the state of body consciousness, I'm far away from the source. When I'm in the awareness of the soul, then I'm tuned to the right frequency in which I can feel the presence of the divine and make a connection, a relationship with the divine. And the divine is the source of spiritual power. And the power that I gain when I connect with the divine, you see, this word yoga means union, communion, connection, to join. And so I'm connecting with the divine, with the source of power, the power of love, the power of peace, the power of truth. And as I take that in within myself, and again, I make sure that I have to do it every day and through the day also, then whatever are the destructive forces won't impact me. I won't get pulled into those things, but also I can have a positive influence on whatever it is that's going on, first in my little world, but also I believe that as we reach the point of critical mass together, there'll be a turnaround in the world.
Thank you everyone for your questions. Sister Jayanti, can you take us into like an experience of meditation?
I'd like to, and I hope you do experience something. First is sit comfortably with both feet on the ground so that the body is balanced. And again, a comfortable place for your hands so that again you're not having to fiddle around. I'll speak out my own thoughts in meditation and invite you to follow these ideas. I let the body sit still, and I focus my thoughts in the center of the forehead. I visualize a point of light in the forehead. And in this awareness of the inner being, just focusing my energy on this point of light, I go deeper and deeper within this point until I get to that space where there is stillness. And in the stillness, there is peace. And in this awareness of peace, I can feel the presence of the divine, the source of peace, of love, of wisdom, and from the source, all of these qualities reach me. And not only do they reach me, but these vibrations from the source of peace and love and wisdom, purity and joy, reach out across the world to my human family, to all forms of life, and to nature. And from the source, all these qualities influence us, so that souls can begin to experience these gifts from the divine. And as these qualities reach everyone and everything on this planet, there's a transition. And we move from a world of darkness to a world of light. Each time I take a moment for myself to come back to this awareness of peace, I'm contributing to creating a world of peace. I hold this awareness of the qualities from the divine and come back to this room, this moment, but I hold this awareness and I carry this with me even when I leave this room. Om Shanti.
Thank you for that, Sister Jayanti, and thank you for the insight into the topic today, which was spiritual ethics in everyday life. Om Shanti.
Thank you for your questions.
Thank you, Hitesh, and thank you, Sister Jayanti. That really was insightful, practical, and inspiring. And throughout the session, it kept coming back to, in my mind, to the importance of going within, and that journey of introspection is the starting point. And in this book here, which you can get downstairs, it's called Spirituality in Daily Life, and it's written by Sister Jayanti. The very beginning talks about going inside and being introspective and learning to find that place of peace, of strength, of wisdom. And I'd like to highlight another book as well, but written by Sister Jayanti, which you can find downstairs in the shop. This one's called Practical Meditation. And there's lots of other books and items, including one of my favourites, actually. So I have this on my desk at work, and every day I turn over the page, and And it's a wisdom for the day timeless calendar. So the dates aren't year specific, so you can use it year on year, and there's a inspiring quote for each day of the year. So that's a really recommended item. So coming up soon at Wembley in a Space, we have next Tuesday's talk, which is entitled Living with Integrity. And the week after, Turn the Mundane Chores into Meaningful Moments. We also have Sunday morning meditation every Sunday at 10 a.m. and reflective meditation you can either join in-house or online on a Monday and a Thursday evening at 7 p.m. And on the 1st of February, we have a special Farsi event, which is entitled Inner Peace for a Joyful and Happier Life. And the Art of Positive Thinking course will be starting on Wednesday the 29th and will continue on Thursday the 30th of January. So those are some of the events that are coming up over the next couple of weeks. So thank you everyone for coming along this evening. We hope you've really enjoyed it and found it inspiring and insightful and practical, whether you've joined online or in person. So in a moment, we're going to ask you to come up and collect a special gift from Sister Jayanti. So it's a tradition at the Brahma Kumaris. So a little sweet gift called Toli, and there'll be a small blessing card as well for further inspiration. So we'll have some nice, relaxing music, and you'll be invited to come up and collect the gift from Sister Jayanti. But I think before we do that, another round of applause and thank you to Hitesh and Sister Jayanti.